Zebb Quinn left work on January 2nd and never returned.
The only thing if he ran away would be if he was afraid for his life or something.
Anytime someone goes missing and they stay missing for that long, you begin to think that something terrible has happened.
Another strange twist in the case came 2 weeks after Quinn disappeared. His missing car turned up at Three Pigs Barbecue on McDowell Street with lips drawn on the back window and a puppy in the back seat.
They can't figure out where he went to. There's no indication that he just ran away either.
It's so obvious that it's almost too obvious was that the car was left with the seat pushed all the way up.
The latest effort to find Zebb Quinn is front and center on this week's edition of I Wanna.
I just need to know if he's alive or dead, and need to find him and be able to bury him if he is dead.
Quinn was last seen in this Hendersonville Road convenience store at 9:14 at night.
Nothing. No clues that could lead to an arrest. No hints of whether he is dead or alive.
We do believe that he was killed.
It's no longer just a missing person cold case. Zebb Quinn's disappearance is now being called a murder investigation.
He's a person of interest in Quinn's disappearance.
Over the years, it's destroyed me. I've went through my soul getting rid of the monsters.
Do you feel justice in this case was served?
In the early 2000s, I was a freelance magazine writer, and an editor of mine at Spin Magazine called me up and he said, there's this fascinating disappearance case outside of Asheville, North Carolina, a young man who's gone missing and the whole town is wondering what happened. So my editor sent me down there and I got to work.
It's a national magazine spinning a local tale, the disappearance of Zebb Quinn.
If nothing else, what a blessing for my child, for the whole country to be able to get to know him and what's going on surrounding him.
At this point, had you covered a lot of these missing person cases?
Not many. I was really young at the time. I was just starting out in my career as a magazine writer. So this was a real challenge for me, and boy, it was certainly interesting. Zebb Quinn, who by all accounts was a very likable person. You know, he had some learning disabilities. He was very close with his mother. You ask just about anybody who knew him and they say he was completely harmless. Didn't have a bad bone in his body. And one day he just disappears. And there didn't seem to be any sort of motive.
Hey, you?
The yellow ribbons are everywhere inside this Walmart, a sign of the concern and worry co-workers have for Zebb Quinn's safety.
I probably talk to 10 or 15 people a day that ask, how's Zebb? Has anybody heard anything about Zebb?
But anytime you have a young 18-year-old, person, whether it's a boy or a girl, disappear just in thin air, out of nowhere, it should captivate our attention and our concern, and we should want answers.
Jason worked with Zebb at Walmart, at the local Walmart. And Jason said that the two of them left Walmart that evening, drove together to look at a used car that Jason knew about and that Zebb might want to purchase. Jason said that while they were driving to this car, Zebb rear-ended Jason's car. They both stopped, got out, and somewhere along this way, Zebb said he had a pager. His pager had gone off, and that he needed to make a phone call.
And the key to finding out exactly what happened to Zebb may be in retracing his final steps on the night he disappeared. And we now know that he came here to this Sitco at the corner of Hendersonville and Long Shoals Road because he came past these doors to use this phone to return a page that he'd received. We know that because Zebb was caught on tape.
Quinn was last seen in this Hendersonville Road convenience store at 9:14 at night with Jason Owens.
When he came back from making the phone call, Jason said Zebb was very excited, and he just drove off, and that was it.
I got a phone call here at the store, and it turns out it was Jason Owens calling in saying that he was Zebb Quinn and that he was not going to be in to work. And I knew that was not Zebb's voice. And so as soon as he hung up, I hit star 69 on the phones to find out that it was traced to Volvo Construction Company where Jason Owens worked.
Jason made a phone call from his place of employment to Zebb's place of employment, pretending to be Zebb. I mean, that's policing 101. That can be figured out right away.
Call Walmart. What a dumb idea was that? I mean, just think about it.
Hey there.
Hi, Jason.
Yeah.
I'm Heather. He's the last person police know Zebb was with the night he disappeared. And one of the things we wanted to ask Jason about is why he checked himself into this urgent care center the day after Zebb disappeared. And more importantly, why he didn't mention that to detectives. Jason told us his trip to the urgent care had nothing to do with Zebb. His injuries were from a car wreck. And as far as the police were concerned, he would only answer the questions they asked.
There is no evidence so far that they can find that he was harmed, but they can't figure out where he went to. There's no indication that he just ran away either.
Now, from Western North Carolina's news leader, this is News 13 Tonight.
Another strange twist in the case came 2 weeks after Quinn disappeared. His missing car turned up at Three Pigs Barbecue on McDowell Street.
The car, to this day, it's sort of impossible to figure out.
We may get some information from the car that, will be able to steer us in the right direction or give us some idea of what's going on.
Clues to the disappearance of Zebb Quinn are few, but strange. This drawing found on the back of the missing teen's abandoned car is something police say they can't say they've seen before.
On the back of the car, there was a set of lips that was drawn on the back window of the car. And on each side of the lips is an exclamation point. Now, this could have been drawn with, a lipstick, crayon, magic marker, or paint. And we're not sure when the drawing was placed on the car.
Inside the car, investigators found this, a magnetic hotel key. So far, they haven't been able to trace where it came from or who used it last.
You have a hotel room key, and the local police somehow can't pull any usable information off of it. You had, I believe, a jacket that maybe was not Zebb's size. And then you had this pair of lips drawn in red lipstick on the back windshield. Just bizarre.
Once the car was found, that really, made it seem like it just didn't make sense, But I feel like the car was placed there and set up in that way to just throw everyone off.
Police now know the car was parked here at the Little Pigs parking lot sometime between 9 p.m. Saturday night and 8:30 Sunday morning. What police don't know is why it took nearly 2 weeks for the car to turn up at all.
I think it was placed there to where it would be found easily. If not, then we'd have found the car behind the warehouse out in the woods or something like that.
And you go over it time and again trying to piece it together. What are these various elements in sum total? It's just sort of impossible to figure out, and it gives the case another layer and a sort of broader life, if you will.
And then a local couple came forward reporting to police that they saw Zebb's Mazda being driven on Tunnel Road by a white female about 25 to 30 years old with light brown curly hair. From their description, a composite sketch was made.
Yeah, the sketch of Misty, or the sketch of someone who appeared to be Misty, was another fascinating piece.
I even was open to the fact that maybe there was a side to him that I didn't know.
They had spent months speculating what had happened to him, and this was one of the possible motives. They replayed these final days, these final weeks with me over and over, and one thing we talked about quite a bit was the fact that Zebb had a bit of a crush on a young woman that he went to school with, but she had a boyfriend. And there was a phone call not long before Zebb disappeared in which there seemed to be some sort of threat from the boyfriend to Zebb.
Both Zebb's mother and father, and I believe also sister, gave a lot of information to law enforcement back then about the relationship between Misty Taylor and Zebb's crush on her and Wesley Smith, the boyfriend. While certainly we could see in the documentation that they were interviewed on a number of occasions, what we found 22 years later is that, there was no reason for Jason to cause any harm to Zebb Quinn. They were friends, they fished together some. There was no motive whatsoever. Jason didn't know who Misty Taylor was or Wesley was. I think far more fodder for investigation there. There was some, but it just occurred to us that there was very little follow-up on anything.
Just in obtaining the samples doesn't mean that we necessarily have something to compare it against, because at this point we don't.
This new warrant focuses on a woman who detectives say Quinn had an affection for and whose boyfriend was abusive.
Presently, we don't consider the person the search warrant was issued against to be a suspect, a person of interest. All we know is that she did have a relationship with Zebb Quinn.
But whether it helped solve the case remains a mystery.
It wasn't really a new lead. It was just some kind of unfinished casework that needed to be done when we went through and reviewed the file.
The disappearance itself, the discovery of the car, the possible love triangle, and you had a prime suspect who the police never seemed to be able to get their hands around. And then the case went on for years, but all those years it seemed that folks in Asheville never really forgot Zebb. The thing is, when someone disappears and stays gone, those theories multiply. And often they're based on almost nothing.
What Jason, has expressed to us is that he didn't trust law enforcement. He didn't trust anybody. He didn't trust his family. He felt completely alone.
Summed up, the warrant comes to this conclusion. There is probable cause to believe that evidence material to the investigation of the disappearance of Zebb Quinn exists on the person of Robert Jason Owens.
And we went to his residence and served the search warrant and took him into custody and seized the evidence, and then he was released.
Jason Owens was brought here to the Buncombe County Jail Wednesday night, where he was processed for forensic evidence, including head and pubic hair, blood, and saliva samples.
This particular evidence will be compared to evidence that we seized from the vehicle of the person that we served the search warrant on, and the vehicle that had belonged to Zebb Quinn.
And there's new information included in the warrant. Jason Owens' own mother reported her son missing the morning after Zebb disappeared. Mrs. Owens stated she got worried and called the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department. Records show Mrs. Owens called at 7 a.m.
in one of those encounters with law enforcement, there was an accident, and Jason ended up in the hospital.
Police say they tried to pull 24-year-old Jason Owens over, suspecting he was driving drunk. Instead, he fled, a chase that went from 240 to 26 all the way down Ledbetter Road.
Sometime shortly after turning on Ledbetter Road, shots were fired at the officer from the occupant of the vehicle. We received information from several people that live here, residents, that they had also heard shots being fired.
The SWAT team is searching for the gun that might have been used. And this isn't the first time police have tried to turn up evidence involving Owens.
The past is the present every single day. So, it's hard just because it raises my hopes.
Hopes that a wreck today might in some way shed some light on her son's disappearance almost 2 years ago. Asheville police officers reenact what they know about the minutes just before 18-year-old Zebb Quinn disappeared. Officers are posing as Zebb and Jason Owens, who they believe was the final person to see him alive. One of the main reasons for the exposure, police are hoping to figure out where Zebb's car was for the 2 weeks between when he disappeared and when the car was found at Little Pig's Barbecue near Asheville High School.
We are really wanting to see who had that vehicle without seeking criminal charges against them. Just where did they locate the vehicle? We think they just went joyriding, and they might be able to tell us where they found it.
Quinn's family just wants some basic answers.
You know, anybody who's missing anybody in their life, the big unanswered question is usually why. And I don't even really need to know that, just where, and let us have some closure.
New information on the Quinn case led detectives to execute a search warrant on a piece of property in Leicester.
As you know, there's never been a body recovered in the investigation involving Zebb Quinn's disappearance. The Asheville Police Department is committed to leaving no stone unturned.
Based on new leads and all these years later, Owen is now a person of interest.
We are serving a search warrant on this property, and we would like to recover evidence in the furtherance of the investigation involving the disappearance of Zebb Quinn.
They've asked for this man's help. He's a forensics geophysicist from Colorado.
In many cases, small departments, and Asheville's not small, but they don't understand the value of aerial photographs nor how to obtain aerial photographs.
Clark uses remote sensing to detect disturbances in the ground that may reveal what investigators are looking for.
Obviously, a 7-year-old case can create a lot of challenges. There is no direct area that we're searching. It's a very large area.
But after 2 days of extensively searching this property, nothing. Authorities did not find any evidence linking Jason Owens to the murder, and they determined this is not where the crime took place. Quinn's family is desperate for answers, but unfortunately, those would not come from the search of Owens' home.
Detectives were able to obtain a warrant for Robert Jason Owen on Monday, March 16th, for the breaking and entering and larceny from 87 Hookers Gap Road. He did admit to taking items from the Codd residence, and some of those we had recovered from Donna Drive.
The Codds were a very attractive couple, very likable. They were involved in TV and film. JT was involved in television production. He was behind the camera. Cristie was a very vivacious front of the camera, on camera personality, if you will, and that her dream was to appear on cooking shows and to be sort of a permanent presence in that world. And I learned that she'd had some successes already.
On Sunday, March 15, 2015, the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office received a request for a welfare check at 87 Hookers Gap Road in the Leicester community.
The Mountain View in Leicester is overwhelmed by the sound of a highway patrol search helicopter off in the distance.
Bill Schoen, who is Cristie's father, called in because she was supposed to be in Mississippi on Sunday and they had not been able to make contact with her. Patrol officers responded to the residence and ultimately met with a neighbor who had a key and were able to enter the residence and determine that there was evidence of suspicious activity.
Deputies found the couple's vehicles there at home and their 2 family dogs inside.
When detectives were unable to locate the Codds, a missing persons investigation was started immediately.
It is mountainous terrain, quite a few trees, homes interspersed here and there, and so that does present challenges in trying to do a search like this.
Loved ones and neighbors more worried as more time passes.
Hopefully they find them. I hate to hear anything about the neighbors, and like I said, it's a really nice couple.
Detectives prepared and executed several search warrants and preservation orders for cell phone, telephone data. On Sunday evening, the sheriff's office received a report of suspicious activity on Donna Drive in the Candler community. Deputies responded and recovered items belonging to Cristie Showen Codd.
In that garbage container, they found a handgun, ammunition, pillow covers, and a bedspread, also jewelry items.
Just before 7 p.m. at their rural home, Buncombe County deputies sealed up their driveway with crime tape.
And I really do hope that they're found safe. I really do, because she's pregnant.
Cecilia Owens is Cristie's good friend and neighbor who says Cristie was expecting a child. Within 45 minutes of our interview with Cecilia, deputy cars raced up Hooker's Gap Road to Cecilia's neighbor. Crime tape then put up on the perimeter of the property that 2 neighbors confirm belonged to Jason Owens. Investigators staying on the scene, neighbors seeing Jason under arrest.
They were just about 4 of them went up there, and they got him, took him out.
Jason's uncle told News 13 off camera he has no information on Jason or why he was arrested.
Information from that interview led detectives to prepare and execute several search warrants that where they believed material to be human remains was recovered from the Owen residence at 8 Owen Cove Road in the Lester community.
I was shocked to learn of this new chapter in Jason Owens' life. The Codd killings completely threw me for a loop.
There are 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. In the 2 first-degree murder cases, there are 2 possible punishments: life without parole or death. In the murder of an unborn child case, the maximum possible punishment is life without parole.
When Owens was brought in for questioning, the dumpster was sitting in a secured lot behind the sheriff's office in plain sight, there for Owens to see.
When he pulled in, he just physically, it was a physical reaction he had.
The significance is that then they brought him into the interview room, and he knew that they were going to get in there and find.
He knew what was in there.
This mobile home, located at 8 Owens Cove Road, is a part of a much bigger story.
It sure does raise a lot of questions, and I mean, it would not be truthful to say that it didn't, but we don't know what we have with that, and we continue to work through that and process that scene.
The Buncombe County Deputy Fire Marshal says this mobile home fire is suspicious.
That fire was located at the Owens residence. It was located on that curtilage. That was a building that was not his primary residence.
With all of this crime scene tape here recently, people are beginning to lose sleep because of what's going on in their community.
Maybe someone was helping him, and they've burnt that down to cover up evidence. That's what I'm thinking.
According to Asheville police records, on March 26, 2015, Jason's uncle Gene met with detectives. He told them once it was revealed how Jason disposed of the Codd's remains, quote, "Maybe that's what happened to Zeb," end quote. Gene then pointed them to a project on Jason's property.
Police searched the property of Jason Owens. He's a person of interest in Quinn's disappearance, and he is currently in jail charged with the murders of a Lester couple and their unborn child.
News 13's Jerica Ensko joins us live and has those search warrants. Jerica, what kind of evidence was seized?
Darcel, police aren't saying anything about what they found, like whether it was human bones or if they believe they have discovered Quinn's remains. So these documents still leave us with a lot of questions. Those search warrants released Monday tell us what investigators involved in Quinn's case found. Fabric, leather materials, unknown hard fragments, unknown white powder substance, metal, and concrete are the listed items seized from Owens' property on that day.
Gene got out first, went to the back of his truck. I got out of my truck and walked around back.
To the back of your truck?
To the back of Gene's truck. And then Zeb got out of the car and walked beside the passenger side on Gene's truck.
So Zeb comes around towards you guys there?
Yes.
And then what?
Well, when I asked Gene where Misty was at, he said she'd be there in a few minutes. And I guess Zeb was thinking too that she was down that trail, and he turned looking down the trail. And at that time, Gene reached in the back of the pickup truck, brought out a .22 rifle, and shot him in the back of the head.
Thank you so much for coming here and talking to me.
It's about my bedtime normal.
Well, we won't keep you any longer than we have to.
That would be good. I'll try to cooperate in any way I can.
What do you think happened to Zeb?
To Zeb?
Yeah.
Honestly, don't know.
What kind of rifles did you have?
22s, primarily. Shotgun, 22s. I like no 22s, just little plunkers. I asked him, why would you so far away from the house? And as I remember, he had no plastered concrete up, and then later he become a pile that he burned brush and so forth in, he just make it as a burn area. And then, of course, when all the things come across the news about the burning bodies, I thought about the burn pile.
That's a big connection to make, huh?
Huh?
That's a...
Well, it's all the years I hadn't thought nothing about it, And then TV's full of the burn. And then the mom's place burned down the second day or so. And the burn thing, it sort of focused back, at the burn pile. Jason loved to burn. He burned it, he was always burning something.
The following day, investigators conducted a search out here in the Bent Creek area where Jason alleges Zeb was murdered. They recovered 17 various .22 caliber shells. Meanwhile, Gene denied any involvement and said if Jason had implicated him, it was, quote, a lie.
The picture that we have of Gene Owens has to do with looking, with talking to other people about him. We spent quite a bit of time talking to women that Gene had been involved with. One in particular, a woman who told us that she left this area because Gene threatened to kill her.
I met Gene, I think 1999. He fixed my car and we started a relationship not long after that. So he was my boyfriend. When I was packing, his sister had called and I told her, Betsy, that I was leaving, and she called him, and he came and he blocked the driveway so I couldn't get out. And at the top of the hill there was a trailer there, and it was a retired police officer, and he said that he called the police because he seen Gene had a knife. Well, Gene after that said that it was because he was going to cut my tires so I couldn't leave. So that's the first time that he scared me. Gene, you did what Gene said. If you watched in his life, like where he worked or just out, if he knew somebody, there was like a loyalty to him or a respect. Everyone.
You ever talk to Jason about this? About him being wrapped up in this and the police hassling him?
No.
Through the Zebb Quinn disappearance, you guys are still in your relationship. What are you noticing between Gene and Jason? Did they become closer? Were they still distant from each other?
Gene was spending a lot of time talking to Jason about things, but he said it was to try and figure out how to help him.
What do you think he meant by that?
Well, Gene had always said that you can't get DNA evidence from crocodile poop, meaning you can get rid of a body and no one will find it.
Do you remember watching the news around the time Zeb went missing?
It was on TV each day, you know. Yeah.
During this Zebb Quinn saga, obviously it's broadcast everywhere. It's all over the county. It's also making national attention. Did you see Gene switch at any point? Did he ever seem like he was trying to also hide something?
Gene was always hiding something, I feel like. So I couldn't say it was like exaggerated more. I can't explain that.
Do you feel like he was one person you never really could predict what he was thinking or going to do?
Oh yeah. He didn't. You weren't going to get to the heart of him. you know somebody. You were never going to get there.
Now to our top story. A grand jury indicts the man accused of murdering a pregnant Food Network reality star and her husband on charges he dismembered to their remains.
Now, Robert Jason Owens was told of these new indictments in court today.
Robert Jason Owens stood expressionless behind a glass and steel partition in the courtroom as he learned of the new charges against him.
You have been indicted with 2 counts of robbery with a dangerous weapon. These are Class D felonies.
And then the next.
You have also been indicted with the offenses of dismembering human remains.
Owens showed no reaction and only spoke briefly to ask for a public defender.
What would you like to do about an attorney, sir?
I was appointed to represent him when he was charged with the murder of the Codds. It was kind of unusual that almost from the beginning when Mr. Owens was charged with the murder of the Codds, the name Zebb Quinn surfaced immediately. And the first time it came up, frankly, as I recall, was in a press conference in which the district attorney, Todd Williams, the Asheville Police Department, and Sheriff Van Duncan at the time held a press conference.
What's APD's involvement in this case?
Well, one thing I was asked early on is this the same Robert Jason Owens that was looked at as a suspect during the Zebb Quinn homicide investigation. Is not our case, and I can't make reference to anything about that case, but what I did do was confirm, yes, that is the same Robert Jason Owens that is mentioned in that case.
And they passed out information to the media which commingled information about the Codds murder and the disappearance of Zebb Quinn, and the fact that Jason Owens had been a suspect. And in fact, the district attorney, Todd Williams, had made some comments to Sean Devereaux and I about wanting to know whether or not our client could reveal exactly what happened to Zebb Quinn and his involvement.
I began thinking about going back to Asheville and doing more on it and seeing Jason. So I spoke with Jason's attorney many times. I reached out to the Codds representatives. I reached out back to the Quinn family because I was thinking there's something really odd and special and grisly about these 2 cases that not only make for good storytelling, if you will, but are important for people to understand.
Defense lawyer Victoria Jane checked in with Robert Jason Owens during what turned out to be a pretrial hearing of only about 15 minutes. District Attorney Todd Williams was here to notify the court of his intention to seek the death penalty in the March murders of Cristie and J.T. Codd, also their unborn child. Owens took a seat next to his attorneys as the DA laid out special circumstances he believes qualify this case for capital punishment, multiple victims, as well as a charge of armed robbery. As for Robert Jason Owens, he offered no reaction, kept his head lowered as he left the courtroom shackled at the waist and ankles.
This is News 13 at noon.
New this hour, a Buncombe County man pleads guilty in the murders of a pregnant Food Network star, her husband, and their unborn child.
Robert Jason Owens sat there, agreed to a plea deal, which has again not yet been finalized, and then sat emotionless as the assistant district attorney read out some of the graphic details of these murders. And then again, stone-faced, watching as the families of JT and Cristie Codd got up to read statements about their loved ones. Owens admitted to killing the Codds, but he said that he accidentally ran over them when his truck got stuck in the mud near their house. The assistant district attorney said he then took the bodies inside, cut them up and burned them, disposing of the remains.
The district attorney should be ashamed of himself. I really feel like he's let the families down. I think everybody should have heard every piece of evidence that the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office collected. Everybody should have heard the real story. Now we're going to hear a story that's been made up by the defense team and Jason himself.
Owens' defense team says that he was heavily impaired on medications that day and that he didn't want to report the accident, as they called it, once he had run over them, and that's why he had disposed of the bodies.
He was always extremely remorseful. Not that that makes up for it or is an excuse for it, but you know, he certainly was honest about what happened.
I know it had been weighing on you all this time.
They were two of my best friends. I loved them because they loved me. JT and Cristie didn't have friends, they had family. And, you know, just like that, I was part of their family. And, you know, this wasn't something intentional, it was an accident.
I have to say my first reaction is that I am so heartbroken. I'm so hurt, I'm disgusted, and I'm angry about the injustice that is being done to JT, to Cristie and their unborn child, and to both of their families. There should be no plea deal.
This truly horrific crime presented many challenges, but in the end, the victims' families support this resolution in that it holds Jason Owens accountable for precisely what he admitted doing. These pleas, signed, sworn, and entered in court today, deliver a punishment that is tantamount to a sentence of death in prison for Jason Owens.
I can tell you we certainly don't believe Jason Owens' story. I think the district attorney and his office put it best yesterday, and that he's absolutely guilty of what he's admitting to today, and probably more. With the system we work in, sometimes outcomes like yesterday are as far as you can get them.
And it was really Jason who said to us, you know, I'm here in jail and I trust you guys, and I want to tell you what happened. I want to tell somebody what happened to Zebb Quinn. And his reason for doing that was not to get himself a deal, okay? He knew that he was in very serious trouble. He told us that he wanted Zebb's mother to know what happened.
In the past, I've had a lot of anger and hatred towards you guys.
I know you have.
And I'm trying to change about that. I want to help you guys. I do. I honestly, this has destroyed my life. I've got to get it off my chest and get the truth out there and get some resolve for his family.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
A major development in a missing case that's haunted people in the mountains for almost 2 decades. A Buncombe County grand jury has indicted Robert Jason Owens in the murder of Zebb Quinn.
One of the attorneys who represented Owens in the Codd case spoke with News 13 by phone tonight. Reaction to her client being charged now in the murder of Zebb Quinn.
I'm not totally surprised by it, because certainly I've known that Jason Owens has been the only suspect that they considered for the past, I guess, 17 years. Now, I'm surprised to hear that after all of this time, with no more information than apparently that they had 17 years ago, that they have charged Jason Owens. That disappoints me.
The question is why it took so many years. Why now?
Any new evidence that prodded this
indictment that was presented in court or any evidence of a body found?
Those specifically are investigative matters and matters for the courts. I cannot answer specifically.
Police investigators cite an ongoing investigation as reason for few details at this point in the Quinn case.
We're still following up on leads of this case and going over what we do have and working to strengthen the case as we would in absolutely any homicide.
Buncombe County District Attorney Todd Williams backs up why police are holding off as part of something his office has to do as well, despite what is a cold case that has captivated people for so long.
I understand the community's interest in this case. However, this case, as our office views it, is no different from any other case that we're prosecuting.
In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the court system here, delaying hundreds of cases for months. Robert Jason Owens' case was one of them.
We continue to follow breaking news this afternoon, a plea deal and a 22-year-old cold case.
If it is a plea, for some reason, there's a benefit to him, or he perceives that there's a benefit.
Hard to believe 22 years this has really been captivating Western North Carolina and the nation. This case really grabbing a lot of headlines, a lot of attention, a lot of eyes really on this. Now go ahead and take a look at some of this video we captured. This was Owens entering court earlier today.
The court will accept the plea.
Owens stating his deceased uncle pulled the trigger.
And had he witnessed Gene Owens shoot and kill Zebb Quinn? And his answer was yes.
Clearly, Jason, put the pieces together for law enforcement.
Gene Owens admitted that he knew Adam Wright, and Adam told Jason that he had been the one to introduce Wesley Smith to Gene. So he considered himself to be, excuse me, the sort of the intermediary. All we know is that Adam told Jason that he had introduced Wesley to Gene. And we know that Gene somehow knew that Zebb had a thing for Misty, who was Wesley's girlfriend at the time. And that Gene, then went to Jason to get Jason to be the one to tell Zebb to come up to the woods that night.
Still, investigators said Owens was the last person seen with Zebb.
That security footage captured the last known images of Zebb Quinn, and that was the last time he was seen alive.
The fact that the family is in agreement with the plea, and based on the difficulty it would be possibly to get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt on the murder plea based on the conflicting evidence.
Today in court, Zebb's family, including his mother, accepting the plea, saying this.
This is the young man that was taken from his family, friends, and community and the world. This is the young man that would never have seen his end coming. This is the young man that trusted Jason to be his friend.
Gene Owens was the killer. We don't doubt that. Gene Owens is the killer, and he's dead. And whatever the arrangements were for Gene to kill Zebb Quinn, those people have never been charged.
We took the case, including all of the police reports, exhibits, and evidence we could obtain, to John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. There we spoke to Dr. Alfred S. Titus Jr., a former NYPD homicide detective and hostage negotiator, for review.
There are a lot of different ways that I would have went with this particular case at that time and even now.
Smaller police departments and police departments who don't usually handle such crimes, they would just inherently struggle with them, right? They don't have the experience. This case was complicated.
There was some, but it just occurred to us that there was very little follow-up on anything. Things are not always as they appear to be. Sometimes you got to get down under it. And in this case, You know, the theory of a jealous boyfriend, that's a fairly, I mean, that's not an uncommon theme. That's not an uncommon situation in which we find somebody dead.
In homicides, there are 3 common motives: love and relationship, money, or revenge. One of those 3. And love is usually the very first one, you know, most of the time, especially when relationships, like in this case, come into question, and you know, you realize that this is something that exists in this situation. That's where you look first.
What often happens with some investigations is that someone shows up, like Jason is the last one seen, with and they don't believe his story. So then there's so much focus that he is a suspect, that instead of gathering all the facts and letting the facts speak to what happened, sometimes officers begin to just try to make the facts fit their theory.
They had the key players, and they had one key piece of evidence, which was that car. Everything was right there, and for some reason, you can't, you know, the law enforcement was not able to close it.
I think you can say with confidence that if the Codds hadn't met that terrible end, the Zebb Quinn case would still be open.
Did it seem like there might have been a fumble with the Quinn case that left this safeguard down, where obviously Jason was able to repeat or commit another crime?
Well, I'm certain that the Codd family would think that, wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. If Jason was in prison, they'd still be alive. Whose fault is that? I think it deserves closer scrutiny.
There's some hesitation to accept his story to be 100% fact whenever you really don't have any other persons or witnesses to verify these claims. But what we do know is Robert Jason Owens, through the letters that he sent us and when we've been chatting with him, that he wants to share this story, or at least his account of what took place in 2000.
My Uncle Gene had came up to the house that evening and asked me to go to Walmart. He asked me if I knew Zeb. And I told him, yeah, me and him had went fishing a couple of times. And then he told me about this girl, Misty, that Zeb was seeing, and said that she wanted him to meet her up there at that campground by Lake Powhatan. And so I went to Walmart that night, went straight to electronics and told Zeb. Zeb, this sounded legit to him. You know, he told me about this girl, boyfriend beating up on her, everything. He was excited about it. Sounded, you know, like I said, legit to him. So I didn't think nothing else about it. And I didn't know Uncle Gene was going to be up there. And then I meet with him and we go up there. There's Uncle Gene. And where he had parked and everything, we got out of the vehicles and asked him where Misty was at. He said she'd be here in a minute. Well, there was a trail going down behind his truck, and I thought it went down to a campsite. So Zeb, he looked down the hill towards that trail, and that's when my uncle reached in the back of his pickup truck, got the .22, and just shot him in the head. And literally, he hit the ground. When his body collapsed to the ground, that's when I realized what happened. At first, it was, I couldn't believe it. It was like this can't be happening. Like, I thought we were meeting some little secret rendezvous, you know, and I thought I was helping him. So when this happens, it went from something sweet to utter terror.
And you say his torso was in the fire and the legs were sticking out and it's already been burning for several hours. It just seems a little impossible to disintegrate or incinerate a body like that in that amount of hours with just a campfire.
I thought the same thing too, and this goes to the cause case. Something that I realized is our body fat is an accelerant. It burns hot.
When Zebb's Mazda showed up outside of Little Pig's Barbecue, did you have anything to do with that? Did you know about it?
No, I don't know where that car was at. I had heard it was in the hospital parking lot. Other than that, I don't know where that car was at. I don't know why he put the car there.
Who did it?
Ended up there or anything.
Who did that, do you think?
It had to have been Gene.
Why?
I think it was, well, just like the lipstick on the car, I think that's his arrogant way of, his signature.
What would have been Gene's motivation to get involved with this?
Money.
What?
Money. Had to be money. Money, something valuable. You know, he never told me, but he got something out of it. He wouldn't have done it if he did.
That night, was there any remorse from Gene?
No, he has no remorse for anything.
Are you remorseful for the actions that happened?
Oh, yeah. It's eaten me over the years. My silence has no reflection of what my heart really feels. Like, over the years, it's destroyed me. You know, I didn't want to keep my silence. I didn't want to hurt Zebb's mom. Over the years, like I told you, I went back up there, I don't know how many, hundreds of times. I've went up there and just sat, just to talk to him. And, you know, to beg his forgiveness and, you know, asking God, please help me somehow or another figure a way that I can tell this. You know, the whole time Gene was alive, I couldn't tell, because even if they arrested him, he had ways to get to me. He would hire somebody to kill me. And so I knew I seen him shoot Zeb for no reason. I knew he would me too.
Why not take that to the grave?
At that point, I felt that my life was over. Whatever happened was going to happen. I wanted it off of my chest. I didn't care what happened to me anymore. I didn't care if Gene killed me. I didn't care if he got somebody to kill me. It didn't matter anymore. But I couldn't go to my grave with it.
Yeah, I think that's probably a bitter pill for the Quinn family to swallow. Because all these years later, I'm certain that all they want to know is what happened in Zebb's final hours. And the only version they have is coming from somebody who says he was directly involved in it and who has the motive to deflect responsibility away from himself. Unfortunately, in such cases, often that's all a family is ever going to have.
Do you feel justice in this case was served?
I feel like justice was served in this case only partially.
I think they got their man, but they didn't get the charge on him.
I think justice was served for Jason in that he admitted to what he was guilty of in the Zebb Quinn matter, which was being an accessory.
The family wants justice. The family wants every single person who is involved in a murder or disappearance to be held accountable.
None of us feels that there's any justice for Zebb Quinn's family.
Do you think justice was ever served for this case, or will justice ever be served?
For Zebb, no, because they let my Uncle Gene die. They charged me 2 days after Gene died. They knew he did it.
they let him get away with it. I shouldn't have kept my mouth shut for all those years, but I did at least come forward and tell them and give them the opportunity to at least to take a few years of his life away. But as far as justice, no.
For that, I would say, I guess, what is justice? Our system of justice is a man-made system. It's full of flaws.
And in this case, it just feels incomplete.